Welcome to Dr. Freedom, where we give you the strategies, mindset, and tactics on how to elevate your practice and your life. I'm Dr. Patel. I started my practice in a Starbucks over 7 years ago, and I built it brick by brick to a multi-location practice with an aesthetic OR and a software company. I'm here to give you the secrets to unlock that time and freedom for you. So where in your practice do you overpay for things? This is the ignorance tax, right? So in today's episode, I'm going to go over and tell you exactly where you're overpaying and where you can save a ton of money and not pay the dumb tax. So in our practices, right now, we all take payments. And from those payments, there's different ways that we do this, whether it's within different softwares and stuff like that. But payment processing is huge in terms of how much of a percentage they can take, right? You can actually have a percentage that might be in that 2 to 3% range right now that's just getting swiped off the top just for processing payments. And they're not even delivering any services or anything else to you. All they're doing is having the ability for you to, in your practice, to actually just take payments. And that can be a massive difference in your kind of margin in your profitability if you count, hey, this 2 to 3% in terms of payment processing. Well, after you do this for an aesthetic practice, there's financing. Now, people love to get financing for different aesthetic procedures and different cosmetic procedures and this and that. It comes with a price, right? It can be 6 to 8% that they can be taking in terms of your high ticket item that they will just be pocketing. Now, between the actual payment processing and the financing, there goes, 8 to 10% of your actual procedure. The thing that you're doing on patients, the thing that, you're actually taking all the risk, the liability for, that's being taken just because of financing and payment processing. Those are two huge things that we do for a lot of our patients because they're looking for different ways to finance or pay for the different things since people aren't coming in with a large sum of cash into your practice consistently to actually make that transaction. So what are we doing in terms of getting around that part? Do we have a payment processor? Can we negotiate with our payment processors? What is the process of that? Are there certain people that you should look at? Certain companies that you want to talk to about negotiating those rates down. Now, in that negotiation, what is feasible? Can you get it down to 1% or less than 1% in terms of the payment processing? Are there ways to change those transaction fees to be on the customer side of things instead of the practice side of things? I mean, if you go to a restaurant right now, they're charging you, pretty much the value. You use a credit card and they're also charging you a processing fee on top of it for using a credit card. That's being given to the consumers now. So that is changing right now in this day and age. And if that is, that can add up to almost a 1 FTE for your practice that you're just losing because of payment processing fees. Financing as well. It's, there's a lot of practices that will say, hey, we're going to use this financing and this is what we're going to tell all our patients. Well, it might be better to offer them different options prior to that financing to see if you have a better profitability because you've given up 6 to 8%. That's a big chunk. Now, in terms of the other parts of a private practice, what are the other things that you can negotiate in terms of contracts? And this is so you're not overpaying on all the different things. Well, it can be a group purchasing order, right? Being part of a GPO, as they call it, right? So that you can get discounted pricing on all the stuff that is required. Even some of the dumb things like just gloves or needles or syringes, just things to clean your office with. All those things can be bought at a discounted rate. But if you don't know, you're going to be paying that ignorance tax of not knowing that you could save all this money by just being part of a group purchasing order because as the group grows, the purchase price for each one of these things also decreases because you're buying it more in bulk. And you have this all together that helps you save to that bottom line. It decreases your costs and increases the margins. Now, The other part that we do in our practices, some practices also do insurance. Well, how do you negotiate with insurance carriers? Do you have enough content, enough procedures on that specific thing that you're trying to negotiate with that insurance carrier to actually have the conversation to say that what you do is better than somebody else and it should get paid differently, right? Do you have less complications? Are you tracking all that data? You need to track it for a long period of time to actually even get to the point where you can have those carve outs and those contracts for doing the insurance negotiation. That's one piece of it, right? The other part is these contracts with different companies. And this is also the inventory piece. And they do have a special contract with the people that make the fillers or the Botox or all the other things that we're buying that we can buy on bulk. Are there things that are outside the tier levels? Because everything that we hear is like, oh, well, you're not at this tier. Well, are there other options that are other contracts that are outside those tiers because you offer something different for those businesses and those companies? Well, that all exists out there. By knowing that those things exist, you can help save your practice all that amount that you're getting taxed without knowing it. You just think that this is a standard fee, I'm going to make more, but you keep on spending more because they're taking a percentage of every future purchase. Now, when you understand that, that's what exponentially compounds against you. It's not for you. It's not like what they talk about of compounding interest being the eighth wonder of the world, right? That's what they say in terms of using it for your 401k and saving for retirement and all the other pieces that go into that to say, oh, wait, I'm going to put this money aside. It's going to accrue in value and it's going to compound in terms of interest. That means interest on top of the money that you earned for interest. So it just keeps on exponentially growing instead of sequentially growing. Now, that is a huge difference between those things. Now, another big key area in our practices, devices. Now, when people start private practices, they buy a device and they think, okay, how can I do the math essentially to figure out whether this device is going to help my practice or is it going to collect dust? First thing to do in terms of evaluating devices, make sure it works for what it says it does, right? Make sure you get a demo from it. If they believe in their product that well, they'll leave it at your office for at least 2 weeks or 4 weeks, right? To say this is our proof of concept that it's going to give the results it's actually feasible to do versus some machines that just don't do what they say they do. So step one is that. Step two is checking the warranty and the contracts. What is the payment plan? What is the marketing that goes along with it? Is there a marketing package that goes along with it? Or are you left to your own devices, right? To say, okay, well, how am I going to market this whole package out there? How am I going to do the next thing for that part? Well, that's where these device companies, you have to have the open conversations. And before purchasing it, call around to your friends, call around to other people, see what they paid for it. There's a huge variability in terms of these devices on what the sticker price is versus what people pay for certain devices. And that's the other part to know to say, okay, is this going to be worthwhile or not for my practice? And ultimately, it comes down to saying, how is this going to be something that helps my patient population? Does it fit my practice? Again, if you're doing aesthetics and you're doing that part, it just depends. Like, does a tattoo removal laser really make sense? I don't know. Do you have that patient population? Do you want to offer radiofrequency microneedling? Do you want to offer chemical peels? Do you want to offer hydrofacials? Like, where does it fit in terms of the entire treatment plan that you're putting together? And that's the other part. If you don't really pay attention to how you're going to market things and how things are going to go together, you're losing out, right? In terms of the key numbers that you need to know in terms of metrics, right? In terms of skincare. Skincare is supposed to be about 20% of your practice income. Well, how does it get to be that? It can't be it on its own. Well, because it gets paired with procedures and with everything else that you do because it's part of what you're treating. It's the foundation of it. It's the longevity of it. It's not just a one and done. It literally is a product that helps them maintain this throughout their life to give them the best results. But you have to have the right products that do that, the right devices that do that, and offer the right surgeries and procedures that do that as well. It all comes together when the intersection of all that comes together. And you have to understand what is it, what part of that is actually what I want my practice to do. Yeah, you can grow in all these different areas, but it depends. Like, do you want to do hormone replacement? Is that something that interests your practice? Is that something that if somebody leaves, is that going to change how you hire and who's going to fill in that spot? And what happens to all the old patients that do that, the hormone replacement part? Well, that's where you have to look at yourself and the identity of your practice to figure out, okay, does this make sense in terms of a device for my practice? And does it actually deliver results? So in terms of recapping the device part of it, make sure it works. Ask your friends if it works. Check the local communities. Don't just trust and verify, right? That verification process is huge to say, hey, does this actually do what it does? Is there a patient population that I have that this machine can work for? Yeah, the machine might work for, certain patient populations that are super fit and have a tiny little bit of fat or this and that, and then this machine can work for those people. But if you don't see that patient clientele, how are you ever going to make use of the machine? You're not. It's just going to be a waste. It's literally going to sit in the corner. It's going to collect dust. And that happens. I mean, we've had that happen in our practice in terms of thinking, this machine was going to be able to run on its own, do all these fantastic things and provide all these results. We found out that the patient population that we had wasn't a true fit for this exact device. And therefore, it was worthless, right? And these machines are not cheap. All right, let's get to it. What does AdVital do for your aesthetic practice or med spa? Our current clients are making an extra $60,000 to $65,000 to their bottom line every month over month, because they're able to nurture their current patient base and also amplify their qualified leads. Now reach out to AdVital to learn more. Again, also with devices, lasers. Be very careful on the lasers that you look at and evaluate. Those lasers themselves, it sounds like a great thing, right? But when you look at the long-term results from lasers, they have not been proven to be superior to peels, right? And so if you knew that and said, okay, well, these lasers are going to be amazing, it's going to do this, they'll do minor things and small things. They'll be temporary. They will not be permanent in terms of these changes that you make to either the skin, the face, and that part of it. You think about laser hair. Laser hair is, the gift that keeps on giving, right? It literally, the hair grows back. You have to get more laser hair removal. The hair grows back, laser hair removal, and it keeps going, right? For that process. And if you have that clientele that takes hormone pellets, that grows their hair, and then they need laser hair removal, then that fits like a glove for the machine that you should get for your practice, because it solves the next problem. The same thing with these other devices to say, okay, what lasers are going to help improve my results? What's going to help my patient population to get what they want? It's not just, hey, the opportunity that this laser might work on these folks, but what is it actually doing for my patient population that I'm seeking to treat to do the next right thing? Now, lasers have been all across the board. Again, there are some companies that are, make a fantastic product for these lasers. They'll do the right treatments for the right problem to solve and get to the right solution. But not all lasers are made equal in terms of what they say they can do. Make sure you test them. Make sure you see that it's a good product market fit for your clientele, not just, aesthetics in general, but does it fit the people that you're trying to treat? Now, the next topic, right, is inventory. Now, inventory is across the board one of those things that says, okay, can I negotiate pricing on inventory? Can I negotiate pricing on my implants? Can I negotiate pricing on my fillers, the injectables, Botox, and that part? Yes, that's one piece of looking at what those things do. The second part is, what's the efficiency of it? Like, do I need 2 color funnels for a patient? Do I need 1? How do I mix my Botox? How do I get the best use out of it? Is there a specific technique that lets me get every single unit out of that Botox vial versus losing, 4, 8 units of Botox? And that adds up with every single vial of Botox over the course of the year, that you're going to be missing out on product that goes, pretty much wasted, essentially, that you've paid for, but you're not recouping any money for. So that's paying a tax, essentially. You're getting taxed on every vial if you're not using the full 100 units in terms of mixing it well and then being able to draw it up with the right procedures. Now, if you don't have a process in place and you keep hiring different injectors and this, that, and you're not keeping oversight on it, that can cost you dearly over the course of that year. So in terms of the payments, the things that you're overpaying for, one of the other things that people talk about is, am I overpaying for marketing? Well, what should I pay for marketing? And that's a tough question. And it really comes down to is, what do people pay for marketing all across the board in terms of aesthetics? And it varies from a range of between 5 and 10%. I think a safe space is saying, hey, 8% of my total revenue for the year is what I should use in terms of my marketing spend. And then having accountability for it. That means knowing exactly what return I got for that spend. And that includes cost of goods, that includes the marketing, and includes the time. People forget about the time that it may take to do that marketing part, and what is that average rate that you're paying for in terms of the time to get that marketing to function and go forward, to say, is it a good return on investment or not? So that's one big key area that people say, well, marketing, maybe I should spend 20% of this, that. Well, if it's not making you any revenue, you're going to spend 20% of it. You're just literally paying somebody else to do the marketing. You're paying with your service for just marketing. You're not going to make profitability on that. And that's not going to help your practice grow and scale. You're going to continue to pay the ignorance tax on that piece of saying, well, I don't know what that should be, and so I'm just going to keep paying this, and I think it's working, and it's not concrete. You don't have any way or shape to see what the data is because you haven't measured it. That's one huge piece in your practice is marketing. Another part is staff compensation. How do you compensate staff? How do you do it in a way that is the right way for you building the right culture that you want to have? How are everyone's values aligned? What does that mean for your practice? Are there things in your practice that you can put together as company growth strategies, things that you can do to say, if we grow and scale to this point, then we all will make more and be better for it? And that's the whole part to say, this is exactly the part that's going to be our beacon to say, this is our lighthouse on that part of it, to say, this is our destination, this is our goal, this is our vision. Bringing all that together for the practice and the staff in the rules, in the contracts of compensation are crucial to get everyone's ideals and values aligned. Yes, not everyone is going to be motivated by compensation, but there's going to be key parts of compensation that also affect your employees' lives, the practice managers' lives, the providers' lives as well. And so with all those things in mind, you have to say, hey, what is a fair market value for someone in this role? And you have to do your due diligence. You have to look and see what other people are paying for this similar role and see what the skill set is. If the skill set is outside the bounds of what you're comparing to, then it's not apples to apples. You're comparing apples to oranges, and it will never line up like it should. When overtime is one of the biggest times when you overpay, because you continue to give raises for a position that may be administrative and is not revenue generating. And that is one of the key dangers in terms of compensation models for non-revenue generating employees. And that is huge to understand, to say, okay, what positions in my practice actually generate revenue and which ones don't? Well, the ones that generate revenue are the ones that are actually doing the procedures. It's not the ones that are like the administrators or doing the other pieces of it. It's the ones that are actually doing the activity. That's one part of it. Should the other ones get bonus upon what the activities do? Yes, they should get bonus, right? But up to an extent, because their jobs aren't changing over that period of time, but everybody else might be. And so that's where you have to keep track to say, hey, what is the 3-year goal for compensation for this actual person in their position? or is it going to change over the next 3 and 5 years, right? And where is the ceiling for this? Where is the apex? Because if you continue to overpay, your margins will continue to decrease and it will change the entire valuability of your practice, right? That valuation that you're trying to get to, it will completely diminish it because of the people that you're paying to do these jobs are going to drastically change the minute you sell your practice. And so that's where, you're paying the tax on the valuation side because you're overpaying for each one of these positions, and it can all add up. If you look at the numbers, and that's the biggest thing in terms of this entire podcast that I want you to take away, is saying, if I look at my numbers, then I can make some actual decisions. But if you're not looking at your numbers and you're not measuring the data, you will not be able to manage your practice to actually stop paying this ignorance tax, right? If people are taking 2-3% here and there, it adds up quickly to taking a large area of your profit margin. And then you're wondering why you can't scale or why you're stuck at a pay grade or a pay level that's below average for your profession. And that is the key takeaway I want you to have from this podcast today. Thanks for listening to Dr. Freedom Podcast. I hope you found some value in this podcast, and if you could hit the subscribe button and share with a friend if you found this content valuable.